On this episode of Rolling on TV, we meet up with Jerry and Marcia Little and find out all about retirement and RVing. Then, we join Jeff and Pam as they spend the weekend checking out the new Winnebago Via. Plus, Jeff visits Four Wheel Camper in Woodland, California. All this and more on this episode of Rolling on TV. Rolling on TV is brought to you by SkyMed. At SkyMed, we guarantee to take you home. And Jayco, America's most livable RVs. Retiring and hitting the road is a dream of many individuals and couples, and today, more and more folks are making that dream come true. One such couple is Jerry and Marcia Little from Framingham, Massachusetts. We caught up with them at the local Winnebago rally at the Circle CG Farm Campgrounds not far from their home and spent some time talking about their new motorhome and their RVing lifestyle. Jerry and Marcia have been RVing for about 11 years now. What got them started?
We started out in a fifth wheel. We played tennis with another couple every Sunday, and they had a fifth wheel. And they finally, they kept talking about the trips they went on and things they did. It sounded interesting, so we ended up buying a fifth wheel and started going out traveling with them on weekends. And that's how we got into it.
And how long did it take to go from a fifth wheel to a motorhome?
Probably only about another year and a half or so. The secretary that worked for me at the time was president of a Las Vegas Winnebago club. And she did a lot of talking about what they did in the club and all, and eventually we came across a used Winnebago, and that started us into the Class A, the motorhomes. And we've had quite a few since then. You kind of learn. As you get into a motorhome, you realize what you like and don't like, and then you see another one that comes along and that's got the features that are missing in the one you had or something. So you kind of grow with it and have to, the best way I think is to come up through the market and live with a few till you finally decide what you really want to spend the big bucks and get the final one.
I was wondering, was each new motorhome a step up in size?
With one exception. When I retired for the first time, we had a diesel pusher, a 36-foot Winnebago Journey. And when I retired, we decided that maybe that was a bit much on fixed income now, and so we downsized to a Class C. And after having the larger motorhome, we weren't really happy with the smaller Class C, so we finally bit the bullet and moved back up to a Class A again.
But they're different sizes too, but we found the 36 or 34 to 36 foot was our
optimum size.
Comfortable range, right, and that is a medium. That's what most people have, the 35 or 36.
36 is the most popular size.
Jerry and Marcia picked up their new 34-foot Itasca Meridian this past January from Flag RV in Rhode Island. And it wasn't long before they were taking a somewhat long break-in trip, as Jerry explains.
Normally when you get a new motorhome, you like to go to a campground for a weekend where you have a chance to try out everything and make sure it works. Turn your air conditioning on, work your ovens, your stoves, and make sure everything's working before you take off somewhere. But being the middle of the winter and after 6 major snowstorms, we were anxious to get out. So our first trip, we took it to Florida. We had a few problems, and we came back and got them fixed, and so we're ready to go again.
Speaking of break-in trips, I asked if they had ever run into any problems on any of their trips.
Oh yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And in our trip back from Las Vegas to Boston when I retired, I was working in Vegas at the time, so that was a 3,000-mile trip. It was kind of, I did a little article on it, which was fun. It was called My Journey and My Journey. It was a Winnebago Journey, parentheses, lessons learned. And it was one of those trips that every day it seemed something happened. Like one of the typical things that does happen to a good many RVers is they forget to put their antenna down when they pull out of the campground. Whack, I hit a tree limb and that was the end of my antenna. And this was just kind of one of those stories, and you learn from it. And you'll see now, if you look up on the crank for the antenna, there's a ribbon hanging from it. And whenever I crank the antenna up, I hang that ribbon on my steering wheel. So before I leave, that's a reminder, did you put your antenna down? So it's a lesson learned, and you learn from your experiences.
We'll get back to Jerry and Marcia later in the show, but coming up next, after the break, we'll join Jeff and Pam as they spend a weekend in the new Winnebago Via. And we'll also find out the proper way to clean that tow bar.